I discovered 3 creepy true nightmares that haunt the dead of night. I never should have opened that door. Curiosity got the best of me, like a moth drawn to a flame. I was just doing my usual evening routine, settling in with a book, the quiet house around me whispering its secrets. The air felt heavy, thick with silence. It was peaceful until I heard it. A low creak reverberated through the pitch-black hallway, sending chills down my spine. I looked over my shoulder, the faint glow of the lamp barely pushing back the darkness. Shadows danced in the corners, twisting and swirling as if alive. The house seemed to hold its breath. Was it just my imagination? The cold air prickled my skin like icy fingers. Then I remembered the stories. The 3 nightmares that people spoke of in hushed tones. Lost souls trapped in the dead of night, their cries echoing in the silence. First, there was the one about the woman who roamed the streets, weeping for her child, her voice dripping with sorrow. You could hear her from blocks away, but when you approached, she vanished, leaving only an unshakable grief. Then there was the tale of a figure appearing at the foot of your bed, watching, waiting. The most terrifying part? If you looked directly at the figure, you wouldn't return to wakefulness. An unsettling image filled my mind, my heart racing just thinking about it. Lastly, the most chilling of all, a specter that hungrily feasted on fear, slipping into your dreams and turning them into nightmares. Many claimed they woke, sweating and screaming, unable to recall what horrors unfolded, but knowing they were worse than death. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed from the kitchen, jolting me from my thoughts. My heart pounded in my chest. I should have left well enough alone. I couldn't stay here, not with these stories swirling through my mind, feeding my anxiety. I stood, trembling, moving toward the noise. The darkness swallowed me as I made my way down the hallway, each step echoing. The cold air wrapped around me like a shroud, sapping my courage. I reached for the kitchen door, my hand hovering above the knob. What if it was just the wind? Maybe it was nothing, but that thought didn't quiet my racing heart. I pushed the door open just a crack. It creaked, sending an icy shiver trailing down my spine. A pungent mix of rust and something sweet assaulted my senses. I peeked inside, eyes scanning the shadows. And that when I saw it, the figure. My breath caught in my throat. Stood there, clear as day, watching me. My body froze, the world around me fading away. What do you do when you confront your fears? I didn't have time to think. I felt panic rise in my throat like bile. A blood-curdling scream was trapped inside me, fighting to escape. Hey! Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon, and while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The figure remained motionless, an abyss of shadow standing defiantly against the frail light that spilled from the lamp behind me. It was so painfully still, the contours of its form shifting slightly as if it were made of smoke or the fabric of a midnight dream. The air thickened with dread, each inhale saturated with a fear I had never known. Heart hammering, I forced myself to take a step back, the creaking floorboard betraying my fear with an echo that seemed to awaken the house itself. I wanted to flee, to slam the door and retreat into the fragile safety of my bedroom. But my feet felt glued to the floor, as though gravity had conspired with the specter to keep me captive in that moment. Then, the figure shifted. It tilted its head slightly, just enough to send a wave of icy terror crashing over me. A voice, as thin as a whisper yet suffocatingly close, pierced the silence. "Help me," it begged, laced with urgency that ignited a flicker of compassion within me, yet logic screamed that something was horrifically amiss. Who would I be helping? Viscous shadows seemed to spill from the figure, curling and coiling like snakes hungry for warmth. I forced myself to look closer, hoping to discern some human feature within the smothering blackness. But each detail I sought faded into a rook of impossibility as the terror clawed its way back into my gut. With desperation clawing at the edges of my mind, I turned to flee the sound of my heart racing, drowning out all other noise, but not the voice that followed. "Don't leave me," it rasped, voice thick with despair that I stumbled backward, the kitchen door slamming shut as a gust of frigid air swept through, as if the entire house was conspiring against me, trapping me with whatever horror that loomed in the kitchen. Somewhere in my mind, I could hear the tales echoing warnings of the fate that awaited those who turned their backs on the lost souls and the things that fed on their fears. The whispers seemed to rise, filling the air until it was a chorus of sacred machines. "Join us," they entreatingly sang, hauntingly beautiful and terrible all at once. I felt a pull toward the figure, the logic of flight ebbing away, replaced by a strange gravity. I stepped forward, drawn like a moth to its doom. Suddenly, the kitchen lights flickered ominously. Shadows stretched and shrank in the corners as the figure grew larger, morphing and twisting until a semblance of human form emerged, a woman. Her face hidden in a veil of hair, stained with shadows that seemed to cling to her skin as if suffocating her. "Please," the voice, now a low growl, wrapped around my throat. "They took him. I need you to help me find him." My heart raced as memories flooded back. Visions of a small grave in the forest behind my childhood home, of the stories I had long buried in the deepest parts of my mind, lost childhood friends, vanished without a trace. I resisted, torn between dread and a jarring sense of recognition. "Who?" I found myself whispering, almost out of sheer instinct. "His name was Adam," she rasped, and as she spoke, the kitchen seemed to grow darker, the oppressive shadows feasting on the remnants of the light. "He is still out there waiting for me." The air thickened, almost suffocating, and I felt the chill of despair encircle me. My mind raced through the labyrinth of my memories, and then a distant sound reached my ears, a soft, persistent tapping, like fingernails on glass. It drew closer, echoing from the back door, a hollow sound that felt distinctly alive. The kitchen darkened further, and I felt my courage wane as another presence began to materialize just behind the veil of shadow that I turned, gripped by a sense of unbearable dread, and faced the door. The tapping grew louder, an impatient rhythm urging me to respond. The woman moved closer, her eyes luminous, pleading. "You have to choose, before it's too late." The shadows whirled, feeding off the tension, swirling in a tempest of darkness that beckoned me to look back. The fear that had once lingered now twisted into palpable terror as both entities converged on me, their intentions unknowable, but their demands clear. The tapping at the door transformed into frantic pounding, like the heart of something ancient and hungering. I stood frozen between the woman and the door, knowing that whatever waited behind it would shatter the world I knew. The last thing I heard before the shadows answered was the words that froze my very soul. "Let them in!" Just then the door exploded open, the wind howling like the anguished wails of the lost. In that fleeting moment, I realized I was no longer just a witness to the horrors that surrounded me. I was now at the heart of a choice that would determine whether I would escape or be consumed by the nightmares that haunted the night. And as the door flew wide open, a face emerged from the darkness, familiar, yet twisted by despair, grinning with a manic hunger that promised to swallow me whole. The face stepped into the flickering light, and I gasped as recognition crashed over me like icy water. It was Adam, my childhood friend, but distorted, his features stretched and eroded, marred by grief and violent memory. The wildness in his eyes was unlike anything I had witnessed, an insatiable longing mixed with the feral depths of madness. The world around me crumbled into the peripheries of my mind, drowning beneath the swell of disbelief. "Help me, please," he begged, his voice thrumming with desperation, yet it carried a moaning echo, like the cries of a bratling lost in a darkened forest. "You still remember, don't you?" The shadows pulsed and writhed behind him as if eager to embrace him as much as they'd enveloped the woman. The woman's presence seemed to weaken as he neared, like light retreating before an advancing shadow. "No," she cried, her voice desperate, tearing through my thoughts and wrapping around my heart. Yes, not who he was. Yes, trapped, don't let him in. But in that very moment, the primal thrill of recognition drew me toward him. I felt an ache deep within, my childhood rushing back like a wave crashing through the fog of my memory. The world spun, flickering images surfacing like phantoms hiding in the trees, exploring the woods behind our homes, and the last winter night we had spent together before he vanished forever. Help me, he repeated, a haunting echo, drawing the air heavy with yearning. The shadows leapt excitedly, tumbling around Adam in a dark frenzy, and I realized the crescendo of their whispers had shifted from alluring to ominous. The kitchen sinks groaned as though caught in a will of their own. I could feel all eyes upon me, the dead and lost, those who had wandered into this house and never found their way out. Choose, the woman hissed, anguish spilling from her lips, careening through the veil that separated souls from the living. He has deceived you. He doesn't belong here. They've twisted him, he is one of them now. I grasped the sides of the countertop to steady myself, a gust of sickly must washing over me that made the hairs on my arms stand on end. The walls sighed, inching closer like predators closing in on their prey. I shot a look at the door, trembling with the specter of reality. What lay behind it had now emboldened itself through Adam. He wasn't the only thing begging to be let in. A sudden chill engulfed me, a pressure wedging painfully into my chest. Choking on fear, I fought to breathe, knowing the pounding could only signify what hadn't just followed him, but also what danced in the shadows behind me. The air thickened with the stench of rotting memories, of lost children reclaiming the lives that had been cruelly snatched away. Listen to him, he said, a grin creeping upon his face that shattered my heart. The darkness behind him pulsed as a shadowy arm reached out, tendrils curling and twisting toward me like serpents. He knows what I want. He sees me for who I truly am. My mind raced, torn between the whispers and my memories. I wanted to believe him, to reconnect with something lost, something pure. Yet the woman screamed, her voice piercing through the haze. He means to betray you, before you perish, before he consumes you. The house shuddered as another frantic rhythm began, this one from within the walls, clawing and tapping in furious insistence, demanding to be released. The specters of the house rode a wave of desperation, urging the reality of the moment to fracture. Shadows reached for me from every corner, a teeming mass hungry for a vessel to fill. Please, I gasped, feeling the weight of both their pleas resonate in my heart. An unwinnable war between hope and despair. The grave I had long forgotten loomed in the depths of my mind, tethering me with threads of guilt and betrayal that weighed heavier than the house itself. That I was suffocating in my indecision, trapped between two specters who needed me for very different reasons. The tapping morphed into a pounding beat, a staccato wail that urged me further toward madness. Then, another scream erupted from the shadows, more urgent than before. Choose, now. I heard the chains rattle, felt the air shift, the darkness thickening like sickly fog surrounding me, making it increasingly difficult to breathe as both figures lunged toward me. Just as they reached out, tendrils of darkness and despair wrapping around my legs, I made the decision to then. A blinding light exploded in the kitchen, illuminating every corner. The shadows recoiled as screams filled the air, too agonized to belong to any human. The ground shook, and in that moment, for a fraction of a second, I caught a glimpse of what waited beyond the door. A swirling mass of anguish embodying the essence of lost lives, with glistening eyes, twisted and grotesque, staring hungrily at me as the shrieks rose to a cacophony. Both figures screeched in unison, their identities melding into one horrific creature demanding my choice. The door threatened to burst open wider, the light flickering until it seemed about to shatter the very fabric of reality. And just before I could utter a word, a hand shot from the shadows, grabbing my wrist, its grip cold as death itself. Help me? Or let him in, came the whisper full of sorrow, but there was no escape. In that agonizing moment, I understood that whatever answer I provided would unleash horrors that would change everything. As the icy fingers tightened around my wrist, a jolt of terror shot through me. The dissonant screaming faded, swallowed by a suffocating silence that hung thick in the air. My heart raced, each beat echoing in the stillness, as I grappled with the presence that clutched me from the shadows. What had I just unleashed? The woman, the twisted specter of my past, faded momentarily from view, her anguish morphing into something else, something far more sinister. I could barely turn my head, but the dim light flickered, revealing fragments of her visage distorted in pain and fury. "No, don't let him take you," she cried, her voice slicing through the despair like a knife. But I couldn't peel my eyes away from the approaching nightmare. Adam, if it were truly Adam, retreated from the blinding radiance, shielding his mutilated face with trembling hands. "You don't understand," he shouted, desperation flooding his voice. With every moment, I could feel the house vibrating, reverberating with energies of both plea and demand, feeding off the tension that thrummed in the atmosphere. The cold hand around my wrist began to pull me toward the darkness. Beyond it lay a void I couldn't bear to contemplate, one that harbored echoes of sorrow and shadows of regret that had long ensnared souls who ventured too close. I felt as though I was teetering on the precipice of something ancient and terrible. "Let me go," I shouted, unsuccessfully trying to wrench my arm free as it tightened further, squeezing the fight from my limbs. Thoughts raced through my mind like indecipherable whispers, each one drowning beneath the sensation of dread, of layers upon layers of horror. A child's laughter haunting, reverberating through my memory like a cruel mockery. The frantic scratching sound returned, louder now, an insistent beckoning that tore at the fabric of my sanity. Would I be reduced to one of these lost echoes if I surrendered to the darkness? "Choose," the woman howled, her scream winding through the air, twisting sadness into menace. "If you don't let him go, he will drag you with him into their hell. It isn't just him. It's the others they are watching, waiting. You do not want to see what he has become." I shook my head, as if to dispel the fraying edges of my consciousness. "Adam," I cried, my voice breaking, "what happened to you?" His face twisted into a mask of agony, tortured shadows dancing around him. "You have to trust me. I need you to remember. We were happy. I remember us. Don't let this place twist me beyond recognition." His tortured eyes glimmered for just a pricking moment with something familiar, something real, buried beneath the festering veil of disarray. The hand around my wrist suddenly slackened and then seized me again, yanking me backward, away from the chaos of my childhood and toward the consuming darkness. "Come home," a chorus of sorrowful voices echoed, creaking through the house as if the very walls wept for what had been lost children, lost souls, all wanting nothing more than a spark of life to draw them forth. Just as I felt the blackness beginning to envelop me, striking dread into my core, a harsh light ignited from within the shadows of the room. It was blinding, an eruption of whiteness that carved through the lingering despair and pulsated with the tortured vibrancy of the lost. The cold grip released, throwing me into the eye of the storm. I stumbled onto the kitchen floor, gasping for breath as the air crackled with energy, the shadows retreating yet coiling around me, as if ready to pounce the moment my guard fell. I turned, my heart a prisoner of uncertainty, confronted by the ghostly remnants inhabiting the corners of the room, things too dreadful to name, too familiar to ignore. Adam and the woman merged into a chaotic battle of wills, their forms distorting, shifting in and out of clarity. Their voices mingled, each growing fainter with the emergence of that menacing light. "They won't let you go," Adam screamed, his eyes wild and terrified, an echo of the boy I had known. "You can't stop this. It needs a vessel." Tendrils of darkness began to reach for me anew, glistening with malice as every scream amplified into a singular thrust of despair. I caught a glimpse of the horror beyond, vague shapes clawing at the threshold, yearning to spill forth into our world. I realized then there was no choice. It hadn't been a matter of decision but of survival. The figures in the corner of the room shifted once more, the silhouettes churning and writhing as my heart pounded in my chest like a dying drum. Then a burst of laughter erupted from the unseen mass, taunting, cruel, full of spite. In an agonized instant, clarity hit me, the pain crystallizing into a single thought. I was drawn deeper into the void. My destiny was becoming entwined with theirs. Whispers swelled. The darkness crept closer, engulfing me whole, And just as the light flickered one last time, the final remnant of sanity hanging by a thread, the door at the end of the kitchen shuddered violently, and with a deafening crash, it burst open. A figure loomed in the entrance, silhouetted by the chaos. The last thing I saw before everything went black was the unmistakably familiar grin sprouting across that malevolent face, a culmination of nightmares long ago buried. With a voice that thrummed with a chilling familiarity, it hissed, "You chose to let me in." The house shuddered, a tremor racing through its very foundations, as if it were a living thing, writhing with pain and rage at what had just been unleashed. I felt like a marionette, strings pulled taut by the unseen puppeteer who had once been my friend, now reformed into something grotesque and wrong. My vision swam in darkness as the figure moved closer, the nightmares of my past coiling around me like a suffocating shroud. "You let me in," it repeated, each word dripping with malice, a symphony of anguish that echoed through every crevice of my mind. I wanted to close my eyes, to unsee the wretched smile sculpted across its disfigured face, but its gaze held me captive, a sinister magnet that pulled at my very soul. I felt the pull of the shadows whispering from behind, urging me to step back into their embrace, but I resisted, trembling beneath the weight of my choices. "No, not you," I shrieked, desperate to reach the remnants of who Adam had been, searching for a glimmer of humanity beneath the layers of darkness. "You're not him anymore. This isn't who you are." But the twisted grin widened, revealing teeth that were too sharp, too canine. "That's where you are wrong. I am more than I ever was," it hissed, its voice slithering close as the air thickened with the fetid scent of decay. "I am what you created. I am everything you feared." The walls began to close in, the very fabric of reality bending beneath a pressure I could scarcely comprehend. Echoes of laughter intensified, intertwining with the agonizing wails of spirits that had built their dwelling here. Their suffering echoed through the halls, feeding the entity now thrusting itself into my life. I stumbled back, my legs shaking, until I hit the cold surface of the kitchen counter behind me, bracing myself for what might come next. "Do you see, dear friend?" The figure leaned even closer, its eyes glimmering with the reflection of my worst nightmares. "You think I am bound, but with you I can transcend. Together, we will embrace what waits beyond the veil. I will never leave, not after what you've brought upon yourself." In its eyes, I saw a glimpse of a collective fright, a legion of the lost, souls twisted into dark parody of who they once were. Were these the children from my memories, their restless spirits echoing my mistakes? Was this what I had unwittingly fed with my curiosity, my yearning to uncover the past? A sudden rush of desperation coursed through me, my legs were heavy with panic, yet I had to move. I tore myself free from the demonic allure, rushing toward the archway that led from the kitchen, toward the oppressive darkness beyond. I needed to escape before the shadows cemented my fate alongside Adam's, but the floorboards creaked beneath me, groaning with the shift of the house as it attempted to keep me trapped within its suffocating walls. The light from the kitchen flickered as the chaos entwined with my frantic heartbeat, illuminating fleeting glimpses of shadows bolting across the walls like wild animals. "She can't escape. Let her in," they urged, a cacophony of voices singing a cruel lullaby as I ran through the corridor, my breath caught in my throat. I turned briefly, back to the assembly of spirits staring with hollow eyes. Their whispers clutched at my consciousness, a maze of despair woven tightly like a cobweb. "Stay with us," they called, a chant that reverberated against every surface. "Join us in the night. With him you'll never be alone again." "No, I refuse," I shouted back, forcing my legs to carry me forward even as dread began to seep into my bones. But with that shout, the air thickened further, weighing me down like an anchor to an abyss. The flickering light faded, consumed by darkness, leaving only an eerie glow pooling from the end of the hallway. I sprinted toward it, praying it would be my salvation. Yet, as I raced forward, a chilling realization settled within me. That glow was not warmth but an eerie beckoning, a door ajar, teasing with promises that reeked of despair. I saw dark shapes amassing beyond the threshold, and the laughter crescendoed into manic howls. A voice broke through the din, chillingly familiar, maliciously playful. "You can't run from what you've made," it called, growing closer. "We're bound now forever." I skidded to a stop, petrified as a deep rumbling erupted beneath me, as if the house itself was waking, stirring from its slumber, hungry for the final act. And then, right before I crossed into the light, I heard it, a crackling voice rising, echoing behind me, cold as the grave. "You betrayed us. You abandoned us. For that, we will have our vengeance." The door slammed shut behind me, extinguishing my last glimpse of the kitchen, the last fading memory of who I thought I was. And just as my heart plummeted, the floor beneath my feet gave way, and I tumbled into an abyss where screams intertwined with laughter, a chorus of lost souls clamoring for their revenge. As darkness swallowed me whole, a final thought pierced through the chaos. I had just given them all what they wanted. I was no longer alone. I plunged into a chasm of shadows where time twisted like a grotesque spiral, lost in an infinite darkness that swallowed every shred of certainty. Falling, as if I were disassembled atom by atom. My throat burned from the shrieks of the damned reverberating around me, and the laughter, oh, the laughter, cut through my mind like a rusted blade, merging with the disjointed echoes of the spirits I had sought to escape. When I finally landed, it was on a surface covered in a viscous, warm liquid that clung to my skin. I clawed at the ground, panic surging through me. The air turned thick with ancient dust, filled with a scent reminiscent of stale earth and rot. I staggered to my feet, heart racing as the malevolent energy buzzed around me. "Welcome," a chorus whispered, voices overlapping like waves crashing against a shore of despair. "We have waited long for you." With shaking hands, I cupped my face and tried to steady my breathing. I was in a cavernous room, walls pulsating with shadows that danced like wisps of smoke, twisting and preying upon themselves. The very architecture seemed to pulse with life, breathing heavily in time with the ominous whispers that surged in crescendos. "Are you here to play?" Another voice chimed in, this one more sing-song, dripping with temptation. A flicker caught my eye, and I turned to face what lay before me, a gathering of the lost, faces twisted in agony yet undeniably familiar. Children from my past, their eyes wide in hopelessness, faces stained with despair and yearning. They hovered, transparent but tangible, flickering like dying stars, just beyond the perimeter of the threshold, where shadows crept and claimed the light. "Join us," one of them cried, reaching out with thin, trembling fingers, fingertips of smoke and longing. "It's safe here. We can play forever." "Play?" I gasped, boiling rage against my walls of fear. "This isn't play. You're trapped. You all are trapped." My pulse raced as I backed away instinctively, recalling the joyful laughter I once associated with their faces, now twisted into grim masks of despair. The agony lurking behind their eyes was a reflection of my own growing dread. "Why did you leave us?" A boy's voice cracked, his form flickering as if weak under an unseen weight. He wore the clothes I had given him so long ago, tattered and faintly shining under the veneer of darkness. "You promised we would find peace together." "Peace?" I cried out, horror slashing through my chest like ice. I can't, but my words faded as the shadows behind them thickened, pooling in the corners of the cavernous room, looming bodies emerging from the darkness. Their forms morphed and melded, revealing grotesque figures with merciless faces, their grins widening impossibly as they stepped forward. Each footfall echoed with a perverse intention, and dread speared through me, clouding my vision. "You thought you could seal us away?" one raspy voice hissed, slithering out from the depths of a gnarled creature. "How naive of you. We are never truly gone." The shadows encircled me like wolves, hungry for retribution, their laughter building like a fever pitch, intoxicating and full of rage. In that moment, the memories of my failures surged through me, the abandoned cries for help, the haunting pleas for companionship I had ignored or dismissed in self-preservation. "Do you see how it feels?" A twisted reflection of my own voice whispered. "To be left behind? To drown in despair?" Curtains of darkness began to drop around me, pressing in with a suffocating pressure. I struggled for breath, my pulse pounding like a war drum, my willpower warring against the overwhelming aspects of guilt and fear. "Embrace your destiny," they chanted, entwining their hands as they merged with the shadows, becoming one amalgamation of malice. "With us, you will never have to feel alone again." But I could only recoil, tears blurring my vision as the remnants of my guilt clawed at my heart. I felt an invisible weight closing in, trapping me within its embrace. And then, as despair threatened to consume every ounce of my being, the cavern erupted into a kaleidoscope of horrific colors, blurring the lines of reality. A cacophony ripped through the air, and suddenly, a surge of my rage erupted within me. "No!" I shouted, voice breaking. "I will not join you. You will not have me." The shadows recoiled, a wave of surprise rippling through their twisted forms. I surged forward, pushing through the disbelief, igniting a flicker of defiance. But just as I thought I could break free, something icy gripped my ankle, dragging me back into the suffocating embrace of darkness. As I fought against it, the walls around me began to shake violently, rupturing like flesh beneath a fleshing knife. "You cannot deny what you are, and you cannot escape," the chorus screamed, their voices harmonizing in grotesque celebration. Ground shifted, and I was swallowed into a new nightmare. A roaring void opened below me, and as I plummeted again into darkness, the last thing I saw was the swirling chaos of faces, reaching, yearning, hungry for revenge. Then silence. Utter, encompassing silence followed immediately by a whisper that sent shivers down my spine. "We are not done with you yet." I awoke in a different realm, though the air still felt saturated with shadows. The ground beneath me was solid this time, a cold surface that resonated with a depthless echo, reverberating with my frantic heartbeat. The silence stretched around me like a heavy curtain, thick and palpable. I rose shakily to my feet, the creeping feeling of being observed prickling the nape of my neck. In the dim light, I could see the ghostly outlines of shapes swirling far beyond reach, figures caught in a trance, their limbs outstretched, beckoning me with desperate gestures. An ineffable instinct compelled me closer, though I knew with every fiber of my being that this pull emanated from a darkness designed to consume. As I edged forward, I began to make out their faces, now devoid of the childlike innocence I remembered. They were shifting and twisting, no longer human but something more horrific, their features grotesquely exaggerated, eyes sunken into dark hollows, their mouths stretched wide, not in welcome but as if suspended in a perpetual scream, a chorus of agony that made my stomach curl. "Join us," one of them rasped, its voice splintering into a cacophony of distorted echoes. It had once been the boy I raised, but now it wielded a sinister baritone mixed with 1,000 wails, blending and merging with unholy harmonics. "You can save us. Save yourself." Every instinct screamed to flee, but rooted in place, I fought to remember who I was, an identity lost amid the relentless shadows that clung to me like a death shroud. The figures shifted again, growing closer, light flickering in and out of existence like a dying star. The air turned electric, humming with ancient energy that felt both intoxicating and suffocating. "Please," another voice fretted, softer but no less urgent. "Don't leave us here. We suffer, we need you." In my desperation, I recalled the promises I had made, the children I had vowed to protect, the guilt that now oozed like a festering wound. But as their faces pulsed at me in the half-light, the clarity of my childhood memories twisted horribly into nightmares where hope morphed into hopelessness. They had not simply drowned in despair, but had clawed their way into the darkest corners of my mind to claim their vengeance. In an act of survival, I stumbled back, crashing hard against an unseen barrier behind me. As I gasped, a laughter erupted from the shadows beyond the figures, a sound so unfathomably sinister that it clawed through the fog of my thoughts. A new entity emerged, tall and grotesque, its limbs elongated and sinewy, skin pulled taut over twisted bones. Its eyes glowed with an insatiable hunger, locking onto me like a predator savoring its prey. "Why do you resist, little one?" it remarked, voice slithering through the air. "You're already trapped. We've claimed what you cherish." With that, the dark figures surged forward, reaching out to envelop me. I turned and pressed against the barrier, fingers searching for any escape. An icy wind rushed through me, drowning out the screams of the past as wave after wave of memories crashed against my mind, echoes of laughter. Then cries for help, confusion, betrayal. No, I howled, desperation filling my voice. I can't. But my words were swallowed by the laughter that surrounded me, wrapping around my chest like a vice. As the figures twisted and contorted, their forms began to melt into one another, an amorphous mass of despair, stretching towards me like a grotesque tapestry of tormented souls. In that instant, the entity stepped closer, its maw stretching impossibly wide, revealing rows of glistening teeth sharp enough to devour worlds. Embrace your fate. You are one with the shadows. You always have been. It hissed, close enough that I could feel its breath, a rancid stench that curled around my soul. Just as I felt their cold touch on my skin, a shattering sound echoed in the void. A brilliant light burst forth from above, a jagged rift in the fabric of darkness through which a flicker of golden radiance erupted. Help me, I cried involuntarily, as hope flared, momentarily within me, desperate and raw. The creature paused, its eyes narrowing in hatred, but the light began to fade, retreating as laughter erupted, drowning my cries in a mournful symphony. With a surge of fury, I pushed against the barrier, lunging toward the fading glow. The shadows released a deafening roar, their arms withdrawing but only for a breath, ready to lunge once more, their wails striking like daggers against my resolve. As the last remnants of light flickered out, the pressure of darkness bore down on me. I could feel the malicious laughter washing over, mustering strength for one final grasp. Remember what you've lost, a multitude of voices whispered, their breath swirling tight around me, promising never to let go. Then, the ground trembled beneath me, and with a final shuddering breath, it cracked open, revealing a gaping abyss that threatened to consume my very essence. As I fell into the dark, the chorus of souls rose in a chilling crescendo. You are ours forever. When I finally hit the ground, the fall felt longer than time itself. I landed, not on solid earth, but within a world suspended in a haunting stillness, a place where reality blurred and the air throbbed with a metallic tang. I rolled to my feet, gasping for breath as I surveyed my surroundings. A faint glow ahead revealed twisted trees, their gnarled branches clawing at the sky like skeletal hands, and beneath them lay a carpet of decaying leaves whispering tales of sorrow. I could hear them, ghostly whispers, vacillating between soft sobs and sinister cackles, floating through the oppressive air. The shadows groaned with a sorrowful resonance, pulling me deeper into their grasp. You've come back. Haven to you? A voice began to form, weaving through the chaos. It was sweet yet laced with malice, a dangerous allure nudging me toward unseen horrors. The trees twisted and swayed, revealing glimpses of figures trapped within their twisted bark. Faces contorted in anguish emerged from the trunk, their mouths opening and closing in a silent scream. I stumbled back, my heart pounding as I recognized one of them. It was Amelia, my niece, her eyes wide, filled with a terror that tinged her face a ghastly shade of pallor. Help me, she pleaded, but her voice was drowned out by the rustling branches, vessels of torment keen to keep their secrets hidden. The shadows around her pulsed, draped in the weight of despair, feeding on her agony while I stood paralyzed. Don't listen to them, I shouted, fear clawing at my throat as I reached out toward her. Paraffin fingers of darkness gripped my wrist, tightening painfully, sinking into my flesh as if trying to burn me from the inside out. The shadows slithered up my arm, hissing promises of eternal desolation. No, release me, I cried, yanking myself free with a surge of wild desperation. I ran, dodging the projections of lost souls aching to drag me into their inescapable torment. Through the trees, I glimpsed other figures, tangled remnants of children who had hailed from the same fractured past, the children I thought I had saved. Join us, Aunt, they called out, their voices harmonizing in a dirge. We are trapped. It's all your fault. An icy terror took root in my chest, choking me further. I pressed on, fear fueling my hurried steps until I caught a glimpse of a pathway unwinding like a serpentine finger into the heart of a blighted clearing. With trembling legs, I dashed forward, hoping that perhaps freedom lay ahead. In the center of the clearing stood a massive stone altar, ancient and covered in glyphs that writhed as if alive. The whispers grew louder still, coalescing into a frantic chant that echoed in my mind. A rusted knife lay atop the altar, beckoning with an alluring shine that seemed to pierce through the encroaching shadows and offering to the darkness that draped the world around me. Sacrifice, sacrifice, they sang, their voices rising and mingling until it crescendoed into a furious tempest of longing and hate. The air thickened, almost choking me as every ounce of faith I once had faded to a mere wisp in the ever-encroaching dark. Desperate to escape, I looked back at Amelia, despair twisting in my gut. She was reaching her arms, stretching unnaturally, fingers elongating, twisting toward me as if being pulled by an invisible thread. "You can save me," she shrieked, though the desperate holler belied the harmony of insanity dancing in her gaze. "Release us. Join us." The shadows conflated around her, converging to create a grotesque amalgamation of her form and the other children, their cries transforming into fits of manic laughter, the light of their innocence extinguished by whatever nightmare had claimed this realm. "Help me!" A new voice erupted in my mind, pleading and mournful, thick with terror. I turned to see my own reflection emerging from the altar. But it wasn't just my face. I was staring into the twisted visage of dark doubts, fears, and guilt that I had buried long ago. It straddled the abyss between the child I once was and the monster echoing my every insecurity. "Let us be free," it whispered, an echo of my own conscience shrouded in malice. A promise that would end my suffocating struggle if only I'd make the sacrifice. My heart raced. The darkness thrummed a sinister rhythm, threatening to claim both me and all I cherished. "No!" I shouted, tears streaming down my cheeks. I wouldn't lose anyone else. But as I tried to escape the hypnotic pull of that cursed altar, the ground beneath me began to ripple, a dark tide rising slow as a swampy mire. The edges of the clearing blurred, twisting into an otherworldly spiral as if the very land sought to merge into itself. That I fell to my knees as the shadows coalesced once more, forming a vortex that pulled me back against my will. The faces of the lost children loomed above, their screams merging into one agonizing wail that rang through my mind, drowning out everything. Desperately, I clawed at the soil, searching for stability. But it was then I heard it. A low, guttural growl rippled through the air, drowning out the childlike cries. Suddenly, beneath the altar, a pair of glowing red eyes blinked into existence, piercing through the veil of darkness. The laughter crescendoed into a manic frenzy, swirling around me, the shadows lifting me as if in a cruel embrace. "You will become part of the narrative," an omnipotent voice echoed, resonating with a chilling authority. As the shadows consumed all light from the clearing, panic surged into a tidal wave. Just as my vision blurred, a hand real and warm gripped my wrist, yanking me backward. For an instant, I glimpsed the face of a man, a savior amidst despair, framed in brilliant light. "Run!" he shouted, but the darkness roared in retaliation, pulling at him relentlessly, a frenzied maw seeking to claim him. In that brief moment infused with dread and hope, I felt the paradox of loss and salvation. And just as I reached out to grasp that fleeting light, a gout of flames erupted from the altar, catching everything in its path, surging toward me like an infernal tsunami. I was caught between light and shadow, my scream lost in the chaos as darkness enveloped me once more, leaving behind nothing but whispers of despair. The last thing I heard as everything faded was the sinister laughter rising above the inferno. The voice, familiar and unrelenting, echoed through the dark. "You thought you could escape? How quaint." Then silence. I awoke to a suffocating darkness, as if I was trapped inside a coffin, the weight of something ancient and malevolent pressing down upon me. There was no sense of time here, only an all-encompassing void that swallowed sound and light. My heart raced, hammering against my ribs in a panic that echoed through the stifling silence. I lifted my hand to my face, feeling the dampness and realizing I had awakened in the oppressive soil, its cold fingers wrapping around me like a funeral shroud. The last flickers of the inferno haunted my vision as I crawled through the earth, desperate to remember how I had gotten here. Was I alive? Was I dead? The line between the two felt excruciatingly thin. Suddenly, a cacophony of whispers erupted around me, drowning my swirling thoughts. They weren't just any whispers. They were broken fragments of conversation, voices protesting my very presence. "Why have you come? You should not be here," cried one voice, laden with anguish. "The curse will consume you," warned another, intermeshed with the moans of spirits tethered to this realm. That I stumbled forward, my hands clawing at the moist ground as shadows coiled around my ankles like serpents, threatening to drag me down into a deeper abyss. The air shifted, and I felt a cold breath against the nape of my neck, sending icy shivers streaking down my spine. I turned quickly but found nothing, the void seeming to laugh at my fear, an empty embrace suffused with malice. Then, I heard it, the unmistakable sound of laughter, high-pitched and maniacal, echoing as it bounced off unseen walls. It morphed into a dreadful rhythm, an ancient hymn celebrating entrapment, reverberating in my skull. The voices crescendoed into a terrifying harmony, each one revealing long-buried secrets from the depths of my soul, a soul perhaps darkened by guilt and loss. "Come play with us," they chimed, the chorus growing louder, tangled with the shadows that quivered at the edge of my vision. "You could be one of us, forever." "No," I gasped, shaking my head, the sound of their delight a sentient force that seemed to dissolve reality around me. I stumbled through the darkness, each step becoming more labored as the night began to deepen around me, consuming every fragment of hope. The haunting memories of Amelia's scream reverberated in my mind, mingling with the children's tormented cries. In that moment, I understood I was not just a victim. I was now prey in a putrid game. With every heartbeat, I felt the gnawing shadows inch closer, waiting for the slightest opportunity to ensnare me completely. Then an idea, a spark of rebellion. I had to fight back. I focused on the warmth of the figure that had reached for me before the fire had consumed us both, igniting determination as bright as the inferno around the altar. "Stay away from me," I shouted, my voice laced with fear yet laced with resolve. The shadows recoiled slightly, the whispers stuttering as they faltered in their advance. "You can't resist," a voice countered, deep and rich, curling around me like smoke. "You belong here now. Join our waltz of despair." I closed my eyes, desperately summoning everything I had left, the memories of laughter, sunlight, joy. I willed myself to remember Amelia's smile as she danced in the park, the warmth of hugs, the echoes of love shared when we were together. "No, I am not yours," I roared. Beneath my defiance, I felt the shadows shudder, a moment of hesitation, and I seized it. The earth beneath me erupted, shards of darkness shattering, and from the wreckage, a faint light glimmered. I ran toward it, summoning the strength of every lost child, every anguished spirit, tapping into the very essence of their pain and suffering. But as I reached the light, a figure emerged from the shadows, and my heart plummeted. It was Amelia, her pallid face adorned with a haunting smile, eyes swirling with intensity. "You cannot escape. You've brought us here. Now we'll be together forever," she crooned, her voice layered with a sinister undertone, the familiar once innocent timbre twisted and dark. "Amelia, no. I want to save you," I screamed, looking into her eyes that were once filled with trust and love. But now they bore depths that revealed only a void, a harbinger of her eternal torment. "There's no saving here," she sang, the laughter swirling around until it became a grotesque symphony. "Only accepting what you have become, what you will always be." With that, the shadows surged forward, enveloping her and drawing her back into the dark. In that moment of disbelief, I felt my spirit being shattered, splintering into a million pieces, suspended between the light I yearned for and the haunting echoes of the past. "Let South forge your place here," their voices howled, the vortex of shadows twisting into a malignant embrace. And then, just as I felt the tendrils reach for my heart, the light began to wane, flickering like a dying star. The whispers morphed into hysterical screams, mingling with laughter, and that S when I realized I was not alone. The glowing red eyes reappeared, more numerous now, surrounding me in a circle of haunting silhouettes, all of them tracing the lines of flesh and soul. And amidst the madness, a single chilling phrase climbed through the chaos, a promise that froze my heart. Join us or become nothing. Choose wisely. Then, the ground erupted once more beneath me, dragging me down into the abyss. The screams grew deafening as I fell. The last thing I saw was Amelia's twisted smile, her hand reaching for mine. Will you join us? She whispered, as everything faded to black once more, and all that remained was silence. The silence shifted, unfurling like a dark flower blooming in oppressive shadows. I was trapped, lost in a suffocating void where time twisted upon itself and the echoes of laughter faded into an ominous hum. It felt like a heartbeat, echoing in tandem with the rhythm of my despair. I was no longer in the clearing, the altar, or even the familiar realm I had once known. This place was devoid of life, suffused with the remnants of souls long forsaken. With trembling hands, I pushed against the darkness, determined to find a way out. Fragments of thoughts meandered through my mind, memories entwined with guilt and regret. Faces emerged from the grip of despair, children I had once loved, their smiles now twisted in agony as they beckoned from the recesses of memory. I staggered backward, clenching my fists around my fading hopes, unwilling to succumb to the suffocating weight of the shadows. "Help us," a voice whispered, echoing through the gloom. I recognized it, Amelia's voice twisted into something unrecognizable, something darker, feeding into a fervor that clawed at my sanity. "You brought us here. You need to accept it." "No, I want tea," I screamed, my voice breaking the stillness, shattering the fragile veil that separated my reality from this nightmarish realm. "It's too late." The chorus of souls entwined around me, a wicked song rising to a haunting crescendo that throbbed in the air like a living entity. Each word chipped away at my resolve, dragging me closer to the edge of despair. "You cannot save them, nor can you save yourself. You've always belonged to us." A guttural laugh rang through the void, vibrant and malevolent, igniting a fury deep within me. Fueled by desperation, I pushed forward, forcing my feet to move as the shadows clawed at me, attempting to drag me back into their depths. Each step was an act of defiance, a rebellion against the very fabric of this nightmare. But the darkness swirled around me, embracing me in a ratcheting grip, suffocating and relentless. As I fought, they whispered promises of peace, of belonging, enticing me to surrender to the inevitable. "You can join them, be free of the pain, be one of us." "This isn't freedom," I shouted, fury erupting from the depths of my soul. "You're nothing but a prison-born lie." The words spilled from my lips like acid, scorching the air. The shadows recoiled momentarily, their laughter faltering, and in that split second, an ember of power ignited deep within. I pivoted, forcing the shadows back with every ounce of will I could summon. "You will not take me." With that exclamation came a light, a flare born from my own defiance washing over the darkness like an inferno. I embraced every ounce of pain I had sought to bury, the fears, the losses, the guilt, and allowed them to propel me forward, shattering the illusion that had confined me. The void erupted in a tempest, the shadows shrieking in outrage as they began to peel away. I thought of the children, the faces I couldn't bear to lose again, and summoned their cries of anguish into something powerful and resolute. "You are not forgotten," I wailed, wielding their memories as weapons against the storm. As the light surged, the shadows writhed in agony, attempting to claw their way back into my soul. But I pushed harder, feeling their grip weaken. "You have no power over me," I screamed. The shadows writhed violently at the force of my conviction, then faded back, revealing a portal, a swirling vortex of shimmering light that beckoned me with a promise of hope. But something dark whispered within me, enticing me. One last glimpse of the familiar face twisted in torment. "You can save us," it beckoned, Amelia's eyes glowing with something akin to hunger. "Embrace the darkness. Accept what you are." And in that moment, I realized there had always been a part of me that thrived in the shadows, that drew strength from the grief I carried. They had been right. I had betrayed my childhood friends to escape them. But escape was a mirage. My very essence had been feeding the malice I sought to flee. No, I spat fiercely, the echoes of long-lost memories colliding within me, pushing me closer to the light. All at once, the shadows shrieked, a cacophony of rage. Everything erupted, collapsing into chaos, and I surged forward, my heart pounding, the light illuminating the void. With each step, I pushed against the call to join them, remembering the love I carried and the joy that had once reconciled our existence. As I leaped into the portal, the light engulfed me, and for one tortured moment, I felt the release. The shadows screamed, their shrieks reverberating through the turmoil, demanding my return. But as the light enveloped me entirely, I glimpsed the truth in their eyes, the realization of my choice, an echoing clarity that shook me to my core. And then silenced, I opened my eyes, gasping for breath, soaked in the clammy, cold waters of my childhood home. The walls felt alive, whispering fragments of truth. Yet, reality morphed into a distorted abyss surrounding me. I was alive, yes, but still bound to that haunting night. A suffocating thought struck me like a blade. The air was thick with memories, dark whispers promising return, and the laughter of those I had lost remained echoing in the hollow of my mind. I stand now at the door, trembling as I feel their presence still lurking, a future bound to the past. The air grows heavy, and despite the warmth of daylight on my skin, I sense that the shadows have retreated but never left. As I press my palm against the door, I hear a faint whisper carried on the wind, taunting me with fleeting promises. You think you've escaped? And with that chilling realization, I hesitate, the door creaking slowly open to reveal darkness still seeping through the seams. My heart races, an echo of the lost looking for its vessel. You can't forget us, it whispers, reverberating in a slow, haunting cadence. Not everything is resolved. The shadows linger, waiting patiently, and I now understand, no matter how far I run, the darkness within will always be a part of me. Let us return, the chorus begins, enveloping me in its ghostly embrace, and I realize the horrible truth that I never really left at all.